Look at them. They're incredible, aren't they? Their wings are extremely broad and almost rectangular, which is why many people call them flying barn doors. Even when one is simply perched on a tree branch, you can still clearly feel the majesty of this bird. But a group of people is watching them closely. They have been standing there for a long time, not to admire them, but to steal from them. After making sure the adult birds have flown far away, they quickly approach the nest, take all the chicks, and bring them back to be raised in specially designed enclosures. This seemingly cruel act was approved by the government 3 months earlier because they are carrying out an ambitious mission, bringing Europe's largest bird of prey back to England after it disappeared from the country 240 years ago. Here is how the story began. In August 2019, volunteers spent more than 500 hours preparing food, feeding the birds, and helping get the release site ready. The weather was beautiful that day, but the atmosphere was tense. Only a few people stepped forward to open the enclosure doors. They did not pick up the birds and throw them into the sky. Instead, they stepped back and allowed the eagles to leave on their own. But not everyone was happy to see them return. Somewhere nearby, hunters were ready to pull the trigger. People had once disliked these birds. Many genuinely wanted them gone. Farmers, landowners, and gamekeepers in particular had viewed white-tailed eagles as enemies flying overhead predators that killed lambs and poultry. Then you begin to realize that their grandfathers had killed the eagles at that very nest, their fathers had done the same, and the present-day farmer would still walk to that nesting site, even though no eagles lived there anymore. It was a blatant tradition of persecution. We have seen many historical records showing that white-tailed eagles were once widespread. They flew along the southern coast of England and ranged all the way to Shetland in the far north. The name sea eagle says it all. This is a bird of the sea, of fish, of wind, and of coastal landscapes. In southern England, the last recorded breeding pair was seen around 1780 at Culver Cliff. In Britain, the final pair held on the Isle of Skye until 1916, before the last known individual was shot dead in Shetland in 1918. It was a leucistic bird. It was photographed, and that photograph still exists today. Looking back, people came to understand that these eagles did not simply leave us. We were the ones who made them disappear, and because of that, we have a responsibility to bring them back. But there are still many challenges. Where will the birds come from? Where should they be released? How will the project secure funding and long-term financial support? What about staffing, tracking technology, and the many other problems that must be solved? That is what we will explore in the next section. The Isle of Wight project was developed by Forestry England and the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation as a long-term, licensed program involving careful monitoring and risks that had to be controlled. In May 2019, Natural England granted permission to release up to 60 white-tailed eagles over 5 years, or about 12 birds per year. The young birds were taken from wild nests in Scotland under license and then transported to the Isle of Wight, where they were kept in special enclosures to acclimate before being released. Most importantly, their contact with humans had to be kept to an absolute minimum so they could retain their natural wild instincts. Before release, each bird underwent a health check and was fitted with a satellite or GPS tracking device. Once they were strong enough to fly, the enclosure doors were opened and the birds were allowed to leave on their own. No one picked them up and threw them into the air. During the early stages, the project team also provided additional food near the release site. They then continued monitoring each bird's movements, survival, diet, and behavior. The Isle of Wight was chosen as the release site for white-tailed eagles, also known as sea eagles, because it offers ideal habitat for this ocean-loving species. Areas of eroding cliffs create quiet places for young eagles, while the island's network of cliffs and woodlands provides many potential nesting sites. The Solent and the surrounding estuaries also offer a rich food supply. Fish such as gray mullet, along with waterbirds, make up an important part of the eagle's diet. The Isle of Wight was also selected because of its central position along England's southern coast, allowing the birds to spread both east and west along the coastline. And as you have seen, in August 2019, after months of preparation and care, the first 6 eagles returned here after an absence of 240 years. Before the enclosure doors were opened, the birds had been cared for by experts on the island so they could adjust to local conditions. Forestry England said that volunteers contributed more than 500 hours preparing food, feeding the birds, and helping maintain the release site. When the enclosure was first opened, The young birds did not immediately launch themselves into the sky like they might in a movie. They stepped out cautiously, looked around, listened to the wind, and then tested their wings with their first few flaps. It was the instinct of a young predator, never rushing, never panicking, always observing before taking action. Some remained close to the release site, around the Isle of Wight and the Solent, learning to read the tides, the sea winds, the rocky shoreline, and the movements of waterbirds. Just 1 month later, in September 2019, Forestry England recorded one young male flying about 680 kilometers around southern England. For a newly released bird, that was no small journey. It was like a huge line drawn across the map, showing that the skies above England were still wide enough for a giant predator to test its strength. In 2020, the project released 7 more young eagles. That was also the year another bird, G3-93, was confirmed to have traveled more than 1,000 kilometers. One bird even crossed the English Channel, flying through France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany before reaching Denmark. Of course, this was the first project of its kind here, so no matter how carefully it was planned, mistakes and setbacks were inevitable. One of the original 6 birds died in 2019, but that is also what makes the story feel real. Some survived, some traveled far, some returned, and some were lost. In addition, after more than 800 separate observations of feeding and hunting behavior, the project team recorded the eagles catching gray mullet, cuttlefish, gulls, and rabbits, as well as feeding on animal carcasses. They are both predators and scavengers, a natural part of the coastal ecosystem. Many individuals also appeared to be fairly social. They could remain close to one another and argue over food, but they usually tolerated the presence of other eagles. But these results created another problem. According to Natural England, during the assessment for the Exmoor phase, there had still been no recorded case in southern England of these eagles hunting lambs or livestock, the very reason people had used in the past to justify wiping them out. Perhaps the birds had been blamed unfairly, or perhaps people killed them simply because they feared that such a large animal might harm humans. That interpretation is up to you, but one thing seems clear. They have not been feeding on local livestock. The problem is that even today, some people are still afraid of them and still oppose the project because they believe the eagles may harm farm animals. It is difficult to know what to say, isn't it? And the controversy has been far from minor. In 2021, a plan to reintroduce white-tailed eagles in Norfolk was cancelled at the last minute. According to The Guardian, the project had planned to release 60 birds over 10 years, but some landowners were concerned that the eagles could affect rare wading birds, pheasants, partridges, and shooting activities. Some farmers also feared they might kill lambs, piglets, or poultry. So whose story is this? Is it the eagle's story, the farmer's story, or the story of a society learning how to live alongside wild nature again? What is interesting is that the general public did not turn against the project. Forestry England said that more than 80% of the people surveyed supported a local reintroduction. The 2022 Public Perceptions Report recorded support on the Isle of Wight at as high as 93%. Local residents supported the project so strongly that they even contributed nearly £10,000 to welcome these returning visitors. And then, the miracle that millions of people had longed for over more than 2 centuries finally arrived. In 2023, a new chapter of history officially began on English soil. The first completely wild white-tailed eagle chick was born in a natural nest. At that moment, the entire community seemed to erupt with overwhelming joy. The project leaders still remember the tense moment when a tree-climbing expert carefully made his way up to a height comparable to a several-story building. Even then, the team had to remain extremely cautious. Even with a young chick, the one thing you always have to watch out for is the talons. They are incredibly powerful and can pierce straight through your hand or arm. Slowly and gently, they place the chick, which weighed almost as much as a small cat, into a protective bag and safely lowered it to the ground. There, leading experts from the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation quickly fitted it with a tiny satellite tracking device before returning it to its nest. The moment the chick was placed back inside, the research team and the local residents who witnessed the scene could only stand in silence. Tears of happiness fell after so many years of patience and waiting. One success was followed by another. After that historic milestone, nature gave them 5 more chicks born in the wild. According to official figures from the partnership between Forestry England and the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation, by August 2025, a total of 45 eagles had been successfully released into the wild. In 2025 alone, 3 young birds fledged from 2 wild nests, including nests in Sussex and Dorset. These are incredibly important birds. You know, the first wild-born chicks have now left the nest. For the first time, a white-tailed eagle was reported flying over London, and someone even added a white-tailed eagle to their backyard bird list right in the middle of the city. That is extraordinary. Even if we live in a city and may never have the chance to see a white-tailed eagle in person, it still matters that we know it exists. It still matters that we care about these things, even when we may not have direct access to them. Otherwise, we create a dangerous precedent that we only care about what is right in front of us. But that is not how ecosystems work. That is not how communities work. We stand up for one another, no matter the distance. Ecosystems have no borders. Even if you live in an apartment surrounded by layer upon layer of concrete, the health of nature in distant wild places is still closely connected to your life. If we focus only on what is directly in front of us, we may unintentionally forget an entire world. But how do we make nature feel less boring to young people? A children's soccer coach with 7 years of experience shared a brilliant trick: speak their language. Instead of using dry statistics, he compared the eagle's enormous wingspan to nearly half the width of a standard soccer goal. Bring the king of the skies directly onto the soccer field. Connect science with something children already love. That is how real inspiration begins. It is time for scientists to move beyond difficult academic language. Knowledge that remains trapped on paper is dead knowledge. To save this planet, we need science, emotion, and stories that touch people's hearts. In the end, this king of the skies does not belong to any single conservationist or organization. These birds are part of our heritage, part of the landscape, and a priceless gift for all of us. A nation that values and welcomes the return of one of nature's greatest predators is a nation worth being proud of. Do you remember when we called the white-tailed eagle the animal at the top of the food chain? But this king has not returned simply to dominate. It has returned to carry out an enormous ecological mission. The arrival of the white-tailed eagle has completely changed the situation. First of all, these birds are among nature's most hard-working cleanup crews. Do you remember the report from the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation and Forestry England? Based on more than 800 real-world observations, it showed that these eagles have an extremely varied diet, from fish carcasses washed ashore, water birds and rabbits, to dead young seals found in fields. They help clear it all away. This helps reduce biological waste, prevents pathogens from spreading, and redistributes energy throughout the natural environment. Instead of allowing crows, gulls, and foxes to dominate these food sources, competition from the eagles helps the food chain function in a more balanced and natural way. Their patient, opportunistic hunting style also makes them highly intelligent population controllers. They never wipe out an entire species. Instead, they target the easiest individuals to catch: fish swimming close to the surface, injured birds, or weak and sick rabbits. The clearest example is the wild-born young eagle known as G625, which hatched in 2023. Scientists observed that its parents mainly fed it fish and rabbits. By December of that same year, G625 had become independent and was catching its first fish from the water. The presence of this king also creates an extraordinary ripple effect. As a flagship species, protecting the eagle means we must also protect its home, wetlands, estuaries, and marshy coastlines. But what about fears that these eagles will wipe out other species? Real-world data from the Danube Delta, where there are around 20 to 25 breeding pairs, was used as evidence for the Isle of Wight project and showed that the eagles did not cause populations of ground-nesting birds to collapse. Data from Scotland also does not show red squirrels to be a significant prey species. In some locations, hundreds of hours of nest observations and more than 7,000 camera trap images failed to record a single red squirrel being brought back to an eagle's nest. In fact, the Isle of Wight was not where the white-tailed eagle's recovery story first began. Before 6 young birds were released in southern England in 2019, there had already been an earlier, more difficult project, one that could be considered the foundation for everything that followed. That story began on the Isle of Rum, a remote island off the west coast of Scotland, in 1975. At the time, White-tailed eagles had been absent from Britain for decades. So when conservationists decided to bring them back, they could not obtain birds from within the country. They had to turn to Norway, where the white-tailed eagle population was still healthy. The responsibility of caring for the young eagles imported from Norway was given to John Love. At first, this gentleman, who loved music and had a gift for storytelling, believed he would remain with the project for only one season. But his love for the King of the Skies kept him on that lonely island for 10 long years. Try to imagine what that work was like in the 1970s. There was no modern tracking technology like GPS. There was no social media for fundraising or building public support. There were only young birds transported across the sea, temporary holding enclosures on the island, and caretakers, who had to feed and observe them while keeping their distance so the birds would not become accustomed to humans. Then they simply had to wait until the eagles were strong enough to take flight. It was John Love's quiet dedication that helped the first 82 young eagles successfully take to the skies. Those pioneers were living proof that wildlife conservation is not built only on dry scientific reports. It is also written through passion and sacrifice. Even today, traces of the enclosures once used for the project can still be seen on the Isle of Rum. Under the careful management of Scottish Natural Heritage and the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the first reward came in 1983. A wild-born chick successfully fledged from a nest on the nearby Isle of Mull, marking a priceless breeding milestone. Building on that success, another 56 birds were released between 1993 and 1998. The effort did not stop there. From 2007 to 2012, another large-scale RSPB campaign added 85 more eagles to the skies. From that foundation, later phases continued to expand. Rewilding Britain reports that eagles were brought from Norway to Scotland through several different phases, and today Scotland is home to around 152 pairs of white-tailed eagles. Country Life also recently estimated that Britain has around 150 breeding pairs, showing that this bird, once completely wiped out, has truly returned as part of the nation's skies. Returning to the project, the Isle of Wight was actually only the first chapter of a much larger story. Once the first eagles began traveling far beyond the island, satellite data showed that they were not staying in just one place. Some individuals moved across many parts of southern England, and some of their flight paths brought them close to Exmoor, an area with coastline, forests, valleys, wetlands, and suitable food sources for a bird so closely connected to the sea as the white-tailed eagle. That is why, in May 2026, Natural England granted a license for the next phase, the release of additional white-tailed eagles in Exmoor National Park. According to the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation, the license allows up to 20 birds to be released over 3 years, with the goal of supporting the developing population in southern England. This is extremely important. A healthy eagle population cannot depend on just a few isolated individuals scattered across the map. They need multiple territories, multiple breeding pairs, and many connected areas linking coastlines, estuaries, forests, and wetlands. The Isle of Wight was like the first door being opened. Exmoor is the next step toward turning that return into a true network. The future of the white-tailed eagle in England has not yet been fully written. Its return is not only a chapter that brings a painful past to a close, it is also a doorway opening onto an entirely new future for England's natural world. Imagine a future generation in which our children no longer have to see the King of the Skies only in old books or on computer screens, but can proudly look up and watch its wings soar freely overhead in real life. That future is still being written through the perseverance of conservationists, the understanding of farmers, and the united support of entire communities. Nature has given us a second chance, but whether we are able to protect that chance depends entirely on the actions we take today. Conservation is not someone else's responsibility in some distant place. It begins when we speak up for wetlands, respect the living space of wild animals, and share positive stories like this one. Every moment of concern and every hand raised in support is a vote that helps the King of the Skies keep its place above us. Has this proud journey of recovery touched your heart? Do you believe humans and apex predators can live together in peace? Share your thoughts in the comments below so we can continue the conversation. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel today so you won't miss our next fascinating and authentic stories from the wild. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in the next video.